I think we have a treasure trove of information about this, perhaps the most important field in economics on the ground, where do you get the jobs and employment? And I tend to feel that it's as important as one other source of very important data for us as economists is what CAPMAS makes available in terms of poverty. So that's why I was very keen on attending this conference and reading what was distributed, because on the ground work, and I've been for 13 years in the south of Egypt, you just can't imagine how important the information we get from the poverty map, for instance. And here I can see again what are the variables that matter in terms of the work. And I'd like to particularly thank Raghi Assad for the endurance and the thrust with which he gives value to doing good statistical work in Egypt. This session has three very different topics. One is ICT, I always get it wrong. The speaker will be Irene again, Irene Selvanes. What I suggested is, instead of our listening to the three presentations in a row, I moved to the commentators every time. So the commentator on the first intervention will be from Professor Sherif Kamel from AUC. And I invite Irene to please present her paper in 20 minutes. One is going to present Irene's, it's a joint paper from Irene with Rawani Esser and Cecilia Poggi.
Hello, everyone. So I'll be presenting the paper on the use of information and communication technology in the workplace in Egypt, which I co-authored with Irene Selvanes, who you all know, and Cecilia Poggi, who is also a researcher at AFD. So I wanted to begin by stating that there has been an important evolution of the use of computers and internet over the past decade in Egypt, and there has been important technological shifts. So given these shifts, the focus of the paper is to understand first to what extent these advances in connectivity have been reflected in the labor market. We also want to examine to what extent information technology has been adopted in the workplace. We also examine the remote arrangements due to COVID-19, and we examine the use of the distribution of computer skills in the labor force, the different types, and also the skills that are required by jobs. And finally, we also focus on employment through digital platforms. So I'll go briefly through the data and concepts and then the different sections of the paper. So we examine several aspects of the prevalence of technology in the workplace. We use three modalities of workplace technology use. The first one is whether the worker reports using a computer at work that is not connected to the internet. The second one is whether the worker reports using a computer that is connected to the internet. And the third one is if the worker reports not using a computer for work, we examine their internet use for work to determine their use of digital devices or technology for work purposes. So the first two modalities are from the set of questions asking, do you use a computer in your work? And if so, is this computer connected to the internet? And this question is included in ELMPS 2012, 2018, and 2023, which we will be examining. The third modality is from the information technology module, which is administered to all respondents, and it requires about internet access and usage, asking respondents to identify the 3 primary purposes for using the internet on their phone, computer, or tablet from the following purposes: work, education and studies, news and information, job searching, entertainment, or communicating. The second aspect of technology adoption in the workplace that we examine is computer skills. So this section was only present in the ELMPS 2023 wave. So it first inquires individuals on their subjective perception of the level of computer skills based on a 5-step Likert scale. But in order to further explore the prevalence of computer skills, we also look at to what extent jobs require computer skills and its evolution over time. And finally, the third aspect of technology adoption, which we'll be examining, is the use of digital platforms for work purposes. And this is another new module in the 2023 wave that includes questions about the use of digital platforms to all currently employed individuals for their main primary job and their secondary job. And the main question is, do you find work opportunities or gigs within this position through a digital platform or app? So I'll start with the use of technology in the workplace with the different types of digital technologies. So the figure shows the percentage of workers who use digital technology by the 3 types of technology: the non-connected computer, the connected computer to internet, and internet from 2012 to 2023. And we see that the overall use of computers or the internet among employed individuals saw marginal changes, hovering around 20 to 21% of total employment. We also notice a gendered pattern, with women more likely to use a computer at work or for work purposes. We notice also an important shift towards internet use through a computer or another mobile device. So we see that the rate of computer at work and computer at work with internet is becoming negligible, and we notice an important increase in the use of internet through mobile devices such as smartphones, tablets, or laptop that has surged. We see that it has nearly tripled from 1% in 2012 to 3% in 2018, reaching 10% in 2023. So there has been an important shift towards the use of internet and the use of computers not connected to the internet becoming nearly negligible. We see that among male workers, for example, the usage has dropped from 10% in 2012 to 2% in 2018. And for female workers, it has dropped from 15% to 3%. Next, we look at the use of computer and internet by type of employment. So technology usage was consistently highest in public sector and former private sector jobs over time. We see that 39% of public sector workers used computer at work or the internet for work purposes in 2023. This is up from 33% in 2012. For former private sector wage workers, the rate was 43%, up from 36% in 2012. In contrast, we have the informal wage workers and non-wage workers that had much lower rates of technology use, with the lowest rate among unpaid family workers. So this shift reflects a broader trend towards internet-reliant technology in the workplace that replaces non-connected systems. We see a noticeable rise in technology use across other employment types, such as self-employment and employer roles, whose technology use nearly doubled from 12% in 2012 to 21% in 2023. So this highlights that technology usage has spread to other types of employment where it was not previously used or required. And in terms of gender disparities within the workforce, they have also come to light, with a consistent trend favoring women. Women are more likely than men to use computers and the internet, particularly in the public sector and former private sector wage work. This section focuses only on the use of internet through different devices. We rely on data from the information technology module or but we also add use of internet through a connected computer at work. So figure 3 examines how the use of internet for work purposes varies by employment type. On average, we see that across the 3 waves, there has been an increase in the use of internet for work across employment profiles and gender. The percentage of female workers using internet in their job is greater than male workers on average, but substantial differences exist by employment types. So the increase in the internet's use among the self-employed was very remarkable for both men and women. The use of internet among self-employed men, for example, has increased from 4% in 2012, reaching 12% in 2023. And for self-employed women, it was negligible in 2012 and 2018, around 1%, and it has increased to 10% in 2023. So these trends, we can say that they reflect the increasing role of internet in supporting business activities, particularly in marketing and sales services like retail trade or other personal services or sectors like education, which we'll also talk about a bit later. And finally, in the public sector growth, we see that the use of internet for work has been considerable for both male and female employees, reaching 36% and 40% of public sector workers, respectively, in 2023. So to better understand the profiles of workers who use internet at work, we look at the occupations at the 3-digit level for both men and women based on internet use. So the figure shows the top 30 occupations for men and the top 13 for women, where the rates of internet use were above the average for male and female workers, respectively. So the top occupations for men, they include electrotechnology engineers, business services and administrative managers, engineering professionals and finance professionals, client information workers and managers and chief executives. For women, the top occupations include other health professionals, client information workers as well, and other sales workers. So client information workers and finance professionals are common top occupations for both men and women. And these results, they highlight the highest concentration of strong and very strong computer skills, which we'll be examining a bit later, and that the occupations, they match what is identified as either ICT specialists or ICT task-intensive occupations by the OECD definition. So we also look at the top 5 economic activities at the 2-digit level according to the highest rates of internet. For men, we see that financial services, excluding insurance activities, had the highest proportion of workers using the internet in 2023, which echoes the finance professionals having the highest being the top occupations in internet use that we just examined, followed by real estate activities, legal and accounting activities. We also see that the manufacturing of pharmaceuticals is among the top activities, which is in line with other health professionals being in top occupations in the previous figure. So we see that the top economic sectors for women were quite different from men, which reflects another gender employment pattern and women's sectoral concentration. So for instance, public administration and defense, human health and social work activities and education were among the leading sectors in internet usage for women, and we know that these industries are primarily concentrated in the public sector, so in line with the employment structure for women. So this section focuses on the COVID-19 pandemic and the use of technology in the workplace as a response to COVID. So the pandemic had different impacts on employment status across different sectors. So the analysis reveals that 87% did not experience any change in their job or work arrangements since the onset of the pandemic. But this is nuanced because we see that only 1% among those who witnessed change had transitioned to remote work, and 6% reported working in shifts. So our analysis reveals that workers with more stable jobs were more likely to experience adjustment in response to COVID-19, such as public sector employees, where 14% experienced working in shifts and 3% moved to remote work. And less stable jobs, such as employers and the self-employed, were particularly affected with a rate of 7% of not working and 8% for self-employed. In this section, we examine the computer skills supply among the working age population and among the labor force. So focusing on the labor force in this figure, we see that employed women are more likely to report having strong or very strong computer skills as opposed to men. We also see that fewer women in the labor force report having no computer skills at all, 64%, in contrast to men, 71%, which indicates a strong selectivity into the labor force by educated women. The strong selectivity is clear when we compare between employed and unemployed women. We see that unemployed women were substantially more likely than employed women to have strong or very strong computer skills with 23% versus 15%, which confirms that unemployment primarily affects educated workers, especially educated women in Egypt. This higher supply of computer skills is also observed for men, but to a lesser extent than for women, with 21% of unemployed men having strong competencies relative to 13% of employed men. When we look at the supply of computer skills among the employed, the currently employed in figure 8, we see that in line with previous findings, public sector are the most likely to report strong or very strong computer skills in line with the use of computer and internet. So we have 25% for both men and women compared to 13% of total employment on average. Further, we see that there is a greater number of female private sector wage workers that report having strong or strong skills compared to their male peers. The lowest prevalence is among informal private wage workers outside of establishment, followed by unpaid family workers and the self-employed. So we delve deeper into this analysis by looking at computer skills by occupations. So we look at occupations at the 3-digit level with the highest proportions of workers with strong or very strong computer skills. So we notice an occupational difference between application developers and analysts, where the most such companies, 3% of them declaring having strong or very strong competencies. The rate of strong computer skills in the following 5 top occupations is much lower than this top occupation. We have software developers that it ranged between 77%, for example, for electrotechnology engineers, 67% for architects, etc. As for women, finance professionals had the highest rate of strong computer skills at 64%, and also women working as other health professionals were the second most likely to have strong computer skills, but at much lower rates than their male counterparts. So to further understand which type of computer skills is most prevalent, the ELMPS 2023 wave includes information on a number of computer skills. It spans over basic skills like the use of electronic services or word processing or spreadsheet skills. We have medium skills like the use of digital tools to create content, and we have high skills like setting up and protecting computer systems programming, or solving computer programs. So the figure shows that basic skills, which are in blue, are the most common skills. We have the highest percentage of workers with strong or very strong computer skills in the use of spreadsheet, the application interface, and the use of electronic services, and the use of word processing software. And the least common skills are computer systems programming and maintenance and management of ICT in red. And we also look at this type of distribution of computer skills proficiency among those who have strong and very strong computer skills. And the results are quite similar, with a higher prevalence of basic skills and lower prevalence of high skills. So in addition to the supply that we just looked at, we examine a relatively more objective measure for computer skills requirement in the labor jobs. So we look at the computer skills required by jobs. So the figure reveals that around 12% of the currently employed work in jobs requiring computer skills in 2023, which matches the share of labor force who declared having computer skills, which was 13%. So women seem to be more concentrated in jobs requiring computer skills. We have 16% relative to men at 12%. However, we notice a surprising trend in the percentage of workers in jobs requiring computer skills between 2018 and 2023, which might be counterintuitive. It's observed for both men and women. The decrease is also observed across all occupations, but a possible explanation for this would be the contraction of the public sector jobs and formal wage jobs, which has stagnated in this period and which is very digital intensive, so it can reflect it can also reflect the decline in the use of desktop computers at work, and that new forms of technology have spread, such as the use of internet or the use of AI. And it can also be reflective of the expansion of other types of employment that do not essentially require computer skills, such as own account workers, such employers, and self-employed.
5 minutes, Sharon.
Okay. So to better understand the skills required by computer skills, we look at the type of different computer skills in 2023. So this module is only present in 2023, so we can't really compare between 2012 and 2018 to understand where the decline is coming from based on the type of computer skills. But we see that this figure confirms that the most prevalent type of skills that are required are the use of spreadsheets, followed by digital services, the use of application interface, and word processing software in line with the proficiency in computer skills. So the final section focuses on the use of digital platforms among the employed in the last 3 months. So we consider digital platforms workers those who answered yes to finding work opportunities or gigs through a digital platform, but also those who answered what digital platform or apps they use to find their work, and those who answered yes to the employment detection question about providing services through a digital platform or app or using social media or a website in the last 3 months. So among the employed, we have only 0.4% who found work in their primary job through a digital platform or app. We look into the most frequent apps, and we see that they were mostly location-based, with platforms such as Uber that employs 53% of digital platform workers, followed by Careem, 19%, and Talabat, 12%. And finally, we examined to what extent unemployed individuals would accept work through digital platforms. And we see that among the currently unemployed, around 11% would accept a job as a home-based gig worker, and 14% would accept a traveling gig worker. So this, compared to other jobs, we see that these are the lowest rates in terms of the intent and willingness to work. The highest preference, for example, was for a public sector job, but this is in line with the literature and the long-standing preference for public sector jobs. So to conclude, we see that the paper has examined the level of adoption of information technology in the workplace and how it has changed over time and among different types of employment. So the first conclusion is that there has a significant evolution in the use of technology, with an important shift towards mobile and internet-reliant technologies across the workforce. The use of computers and internet were more common in formal jobs, public sector and formal private sector wage employment. And our findings also highlight that almost a quarter of unemployed individuals have strong computer skills. So this would suggest that investment in digital intensive sectors would not only provide potential employment opportunities for individuals with strong computer skills who are seeking jobs that match their skills, but it would also expand sectors that are likely to provide formal jobs and can represent an employment source for women. So these sectors would be information and communication technology, financial activities, professional, scientific, and technical activities. Another necessary policy discussion would be to expand technology adoption to other digital emerging sectors, namely education and health, who are relatively less intensive in technology adoption, but would greatly benefit from the use of technology in raising the quality of their services. Promoting and supporting digital entrepreneurship would also be necessary to support and sustain the expansion in terms of improving the business environment and access to finance for own account workers. So there has been already reforms in that area. And finally, investing in measurement of work through digital platform would be necessary. So there are currently difficulties and divergence in measuring its extent, and the 2023 wave of the ELMPS represents an initial effort to estimate the number of digital platform workers, but it is necessary to continue investing efforts in the measurement of digital platform to better capture the characteristics and explore opportunities related to this work. Thank you.
Thank you for an excellent paper. And now we're lucky to have Professor Sharif Kamel from AUC.
Thank you very much, Professor Handousa. And I apologize for not being able to make it in person. I'm just not feeling well. That's why I opted for the hybrid model. First of all, I would like to thank ERF for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this event. And I would like to thank Rawan and Iran and Cecilia for actually addressing extremely important issue, which is the intersection of people and technology. This is exactly the conversations that most organizations, whether public or private, are having to try to become more efficient and increase their productivity levels. So I think the paper for me is an eye opener and raises so many eyebrows on where we are and where we ought to be. And it addresses the characteristics of different types of organizations in Egypt and the deployment of technology applications. I mean, they call them computer skills throughout the paper, but I truly believe that we should be way ahead of basic computer skills, and I'll come to that in a minute. So they address the gender issue between the utilization, the public and the private, the formal and the informal. I think that they've done a good job in looking at different aspects and really sort of delving into where we are in terms of the spread of technology in different organizations, but more importantly, the level of adoption. Because the percentage, which is already low, by the way, the percentage of usage could be deceiving, but also the adoption level is what counts. It's what makes all the difference. Obviously, looking at the paper and the findings of the paper, as Rawan eloquently shared with us, when it comes to the coverage of the internet across Egypt, it might have improved over the last few years, but again remains a question, which is the performance, and that in many ways affects the level and flow of work using internet connectivity. Having said that, when we look at the level of usage, whether we compare in the 2012-2018 period or 2018-2023, there are variations and there are movements in the percentages. Yet overall, it is still, in my view, way below par, and that exactly what the paper indicated. There might be improvements in some levels, but the improvement is more or less relative, depending where we're starting. There has been surely a shift in the utilization of technology sort of infrastructure, moving from computers to laptops to tablets to phones, and rightly so. People have moved with it. The question is how skilled they are to face the needs of the future of work. We all speak of the future of work. The future of work is today, and depending how skilled they are. And it has been said over time and again that in the years to come, computers and machines and robots are going to replace people. I beg to differ. I think in the foreseeable future, it's more skilled people who are going to replace less skilled people, not the technology is going to replace people. So other jobs are going to be created. Having said that, if we refer to the paper and the focus on the basic skills, which are clearly not really sort of spread or disseminated, these are the ones who are going to be replaced through, I mean, to put it simply, automation. So I think one of the issues that, and I see this paper, by the way, as a beginning of a series of follow-up research projects and papers that would build on the excellent base that was developed in this paper, looking at what exactly the changing and dynamic skills that employees would need across different sectors because they differ. Naturally, so the paper highlighted that there are certain sectors, including ICT and the financial sector, and professional service are way ahead than other sectors, sadly, including health and education. And a bit of a caveat here, I personally got a bit confused when there was a distinction between the sectors that are doing well relatively, which is real estate, and then the ones that are not really doing well, including construction. I'm not sure how they make the distinction between real estate and construction. Again, maybe I misread it, but this is a question that I wanted to clarify. So again, what are the skill sets that are needed as we move forward? Because that would very much inform policymakers on how to address those issues and try to improve the percentages that we've seen throughout the paper. Plus, a few remaining points I would like to address, including a few questions that would help sort of the researchers as we move forward. You look at even the applications that are being used. Again, that's why I'm saying delving more into the nitty-gritty details of the data is extremely important. So access is one thing, affordability is one thing, and then adoption and what kind of adoption and how it actually affects the work, whether private or public or regardless of the sector. The digital platforms that are out there, which one are being used? How are they being used? Are the staff and the employees ready to use them? When you look at the ecosystem of technology application, it's basically four different elements. And it starts with people and how ready they are. And then it moves to the data. Is it accessible or not? And then the third is the model that they're using and how ready the model is, the procedures, the flows, and so on. And finally comes the infrastructure. Unlike what many people think that infrastructure comes first, actually it comes fourth out of four. So how are we ready when it comes to that? I think will be very interesting to build on this paper as they move forward. Talking in 2024 about the basic skills and whether people use Word or Excel and so on is pretty much passé in how the world is in today, especially with the conversations of digital transformation, the acceleration of digital transformation, and the impact of artificial intelligence and the like. So these are just very quick thoughts and reactions. I think, again, the paper provides a very strong base on where we are and where we should be going and what do we need to do to help improve those percentages. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was extremely interesting. Thank you. And useful for our researchers around this room. We're now going to move to the second topic, which is a totally different one, green jobs and the transition to the green jobs. And the analysis and work includes Mona Amer, who's here to give us her presentation.
Good afternoon. So I'm going to present a paper that was co-authored with Hala Abu Ali. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today. Maybe she will come later. She probably escaped. I know. I will still friend after preparing this paper. So it's a very, a very interesting topic and very new to me. And fortunately, Hala Abu Ali brought me to environmental issue and adding, of course, the labor topics in it. So green transition is crucial and is a it's a critical goal for Egypt within its sustainable development strategy. However, we lack studies regarding the impact of transition, the green economy transition on the labor market. This paper is not going to address all issues related to the impact of green transition to the labor market, but at least we will try to add some information. And thanks to the fact that the ELMPS 2023 incorporated for the first time questions related to the ILO's framework on employment in environmental activities. So what we are looking at is the prevalence and the size and the scope of green activities. And I will explain later what we define and how we classify green activities and green jobs. So we are looking at its size, its prevalence, but also characteristics of green activities and the degree of greenness. We are focusing on gender disparities, public-private disparities, economic activity, occupation, employment status, age, and education. We also look at whether or not green activities are diversified in terms of occupations and economic activities, and the degree of greenness that is in it. And finally, we are comparing attributes of green activities, green jobs related to green activities. So we're comparing green and non-green activities in terms of wages, social benefits, and job stability. So first, I just want to highlight one thing that I think is very interesting. So by just adding a few questions in the ELMPS 2023, we are able to, provide a whole new area of research related to green jobs, just with adding 10 questions with a bit of sub-question. But mainly there are only 10 questions that enable us to open a whole area of research regarding green activities and green jobs. So what these 10 questions align with ILO frameworks that defined and classified employment regarding green activities and what is called employment in the environment, goods and services. So we have 10 areas: renewable energy, energy efficient goods and technology, water efficient goods and technologies, recycling and resource reuse, sustainable agriculture, fisheries or forestry, prevention, reduction and removal of pollution and air emission, environmental protection and natural resources conservation, environment compliance, education, training and public awareness, research, planning, maintenance, and control of environmental technology. So we basically have other specified environmental technologies, practices, goods and services. So mainly this employment in what we call green activities are divided into two parts: what is called the output and what is called the process. So very simply, output is employment in the production of environmental goods and services for the consumption outside the production of the unit. And the process is within the process of production that might not have anything to do with the production of environmental products or services. So for instance, to give you some examples of employment in the production of environmental output, could be working in a factory that produces electric vehicles, or it could be that farming, organic, related to organic farming. And regarding the process, it could be just by reducing energy consumption or using renewable energy in the production process, whether or not the final product is eco-friendly or not. And of course, we can have both process and output employment. So we could have a process that use renewable energy and also produce, I don't know, organic vegetable, for instance. We are looking at, we are calling them green activities and not green jobs, because the ILO add two important things to be called green jobs to these green activities. One is to have adequate wage, which would be at least 2/3 of the median wage. And the second characteristic of green jobs would be to have social insurance. So here we are going, later to present characteristics of these green activities in terms of wages and in terms of social benefits. But because if we would have, only talked about green jobs as they are classified and defined by the ILO, our sample size would have been too small. So this is the reason why we are talking broadly about green activities and not green jobs per se, as defined by the ILO. So what is the size of green activities? Actually, we didn't have any idea before working on this paper. We didn't have any reference, and we didn't know what to expect. And we were, I think, I don't know if it's if the size of green activities is high or low, I have no idea, but we were quite surprised. And out of the 26 million persons employed in Egypt, there are 2.1 million workers in green activities, whether output, process, or both output and process. And there is a strong concentration of these green activities in the private sector and among males. So we have 1.7 million jobs that we can classify as green activities in the private sector, and 400,000 green activities in the public sector. And we have 1.8 million green activities among male workers and 300,000 women working in green activities. So in terms of share, the total share is 7.8%. So I'm not sure this is a large share, this is a small one. Actually, really, we would have expected maybe less, but we didn't have any reference. So I think 7.8% is not bad. And there are some disparities between public and private, between men and women. So we have a high proportion of green activities in the private sector as compared to the public, 8% in the private sector, 7.1% in the public sector, but these disparities are not very large. And we have larger disparities between men and women. 8.5% of men are employed in green activities as compared to 6.2% of women. And these gender disparities are more pronounced in the public sector, where we have 7.8% of men working in green activities as compared to only 5.6% of women working in activities related to environment protection or resource management. So now we are looking more on looking at whether these green activities are more output related or process related, or both output and process related. And actually, the largest share of green activities are among the combination of process and output. Around approximately 43% of green activities in green employment in green activities are a combination of process and output, and this is followed by process only, 35%, and employment in green activities where the final product is eco-friendly represent only 22%. But there are gender and institutional sector disparities. For instance, employment in output only is more common, more frequent in the private sector, probably because this is driven by agricultural production. And the combination of process and output is more prevalent in the public sector. And there are also some disparities between men and women. Men are more engaged in output only, but this is also probably driven by men working more in agricultural activities as compared to women. And this is both in the public and private sector. We have these 10 aspects of employment in environmental production of goods and services. And we have looked at separately these 10 aspects. And here we have the distribution of these 10 aspects. Of course, they can be added. So employment can be could involve many types, 1 to 10 types of green aspects. And the most common ones among these 10 are renewable energy, sustainable, sorry, this is not sustainable agriculture, but the most common one are renewable energy, energy efficiency, water efficiency, recycling, and also sustainable agriculture. And to a lesser extent, what we find, some quite frequent but not as frequent, is protection of the environment and prevention of pollution, different types of pollution. And sorry, this is a mistake. Sustainable agriculture is not it's not low, actually. It's quite important, and particularly in the private sector. So there are disparities between the public and private sectors. The public sector is more active in renewable energy, energy efficiency, water efficiency, environmental protection, awareness initiative, and research. And on the contrary, the private sector focuses more on sustainable agriculture, recycling, and pollution prevention.
Oh, no, you don't have very much time.
Oh, okay.
So you have to move
Okay,
fast.
I'll try. Okay, so we have 7.8% of employment in green activities. However, these green activities are not very green. So the majority of employment in green activities are, not very green, in the sense that they involve only one aspect or two aspects of these 10 aspects, respecting the environment, protecting it, are related to management of resources. So a majority of green jobs address only one green aspect, and over 75% of green activities incorporate just one or two green aspects. And there are some disparities between public and private sector, but I think I will, because I don't have much time, maybe I will discuss more what are the economic activities and occupation related to this green activity.
Being
Sorry?
selfish.
Agriculture is there, don't worry. So this is exactly where this is. So we have three key sectors: utilities, mainly in the public sector, but also agriculture. 18% of green activities are in the agriculture economic activities. And finally, between these, among these three most frequent economic activities, we have mining and manufacturing. But of course, there are some disparities between men and women, and men have higher representation in green jobs within the agriculture, manufacturing, construction, information and communication, professional and administrative services as compared to women. And women working in green activities are more frequently working in within the utilities sectors. This is related to their work in the public sector. So we also looked at economic activity by green incidence. So because the majority of employment in green activities involve only one or two aspects, we were, just considering whether or not
the distribution of economic activities varies according to green incidence. So the green incidence is here the number of green aspects within green activities. And in the public sector, green jobs are concentrated in administration, education, health, followed by utilities and manufacturing. But when the number of green aspects in green jobs increases, there are new economic activities that emerge, such as accommodation, finance, and professional activities. And in the private sector is totally different. It's jobs with one or two green aspects are related to agriculture, manufacturing, and trade. And when the incidence of aspect of eco-friendly increases, we have more economic activities such as construction. I guess I need to move on the distribution of green jobs by education. Here we have excluded agriculture, I'm sorry, because it has biased the results. So what we see is that the share of green jobs in employment increases with education for both men and women, but increases more for women, even though the share of green jobs for highly educated women doesn't, it's quite low. It's only 5 to 6% only of women with secondary and higher education working in employment related to green activities. And then we have compared, we wanted to check whether green jobs are more attractive or not than non-green jobs. So we have looked at hourly wages, comparing green and non-green jobs. And if you look at the total overall, there, it doesn't seem that green jobs pay better. The average hourly wage is quite similar overall, but there are disparities across public and private sector and across genders. So for instance, for men, the hourly wage is higher for green jobs, but in the private sector for men, it's the reverse. So green jobs pay less in the private sector for men, whether it is in the formal private sector or in the informal private employment. For women, it's the reverse. Green jobs pay better in informal private employment and pay less than non-green jobs in the public sector. And we have looked at different types of attractiveness between green and non-green jobs, not only wages, but also social insurance, having a formal contract, having a health insurance, or whether or not a job is more stable when we have a green jobs or not. So overall, green jobs have better social benefits, a higher incidence, high prevalence of social security, higher incidence of health insurance, higher incidence of having a contract, and a higher prevalence of stable jobs. This is true overall. This is true for men, whether in the public or the private sector. And for women, this is true for most of these benefits, except for having a contract or having health insurance in the private sector. But overall, green jobs seems that they provide better social benefits. So the key findings for these papers is that green activities, employment in green activities represent, I'm not sure if it's small, but let's say it's a small fraction of total employment. And they are more prevalent among men and in the private sector. And prevalence of green jobs is higher in the private sector, but also among higher educated workers, in particular for women. They're not systematically more attractive in terms of wage, but they are more attractive in terms of social benefits. And finally, we have this 8% of green jobs, but they're not very green and they're not very diverse. There are a few key economic activities where we can find green jobs, and there are not very, many in agriculture, mainly in manufacturing. And I guess there is room for expansion to other economic activities. For instance, transportation is very small. Even though green jobs appear in the manufacturing sectors, they are still, they don't represent a very high share. So I think I will stop here.
Excellent. I'll just tell you one reason why I'm biased for agriculture, because if you note, to date, a huge percentage of water that we use in homes is not recycled. So it's an opportunity that's enormous in MENA, where I work, anywhere in Egypt. I think agriculture can use this water, especially for things that are helpful for the climate change, because I mean, we plant like 1,000 trees higher up than where the water normally reaches, and you get beautiful wood from them. You get the trees that are used to make silk. What used to be the toot, which is a huge tree, today it's a tiny little dwarf tree with no fruit. It just has huge leaves, and we feed them to the silkworm and the whole cycle. I mean, it's really high value interventions. We sell carbon bonds because we're saving a lot of things along the line in the rural areas in the south, in agriculture. So I think if you're going to focus on some areas, I mean, it's a winner, the agriculture. Okay, we now are asking Dr. Ahmed Fikri.
It's me.
Sorry, it's Ghada Barsoum, معلش يا حبيبتي. Ghada Barsoum is a professor at the American University in Cairo, and she's going to give us her take on the paper concerning the transition to green jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Heba. I hate to be stopping you, to be the reason why you're stopping, just to give this feedback, because we wanted to learn more about the green bonds and how you're doing this, how you're doing the green bonds and the green and the silk. I mean, we wanted to learn more. I think what you're saying is going to be much more interesting than what I would say. I want to congratulate the authors for the paper. In fact, Mona made a much clearer presentation than what I've read. That's my first observation. It's just, so your distinction between green jobs and green activities is actually less pronounced in the paper, or does, and actually throughout the paper you go through green jobs. You don't go green jobs, green activities. And I think it's very important that you're making this distinction for the specific reason that, which you highlighted. ILO says green jobs are decent jobs that are da, and we know the rest. But we really need to show in the analysis that we are talking about green activities, not green jobs, and that we are clear about the definition. I would think that the definitional argument would be a great part of the paper. I would want to see this in the paper, because green jobs and then the green economy are new concepts. And it really is about how you define it. And then the rest will follow. Whether you have more men or more women in green jobs, whether you would have it in the public sector or the private sector, it really boils down to how you define green jobs. So that is my starting point. And I love your statement about the degrees of greenness. You say that because it's very obvious that it's a continuum. Greenness is a continuum. There are jobs that are green by definition, but not necessarily by output. Green by process, but not necessarily by output. That we wanted to see clearer in the paper, how you are showing and what are the questions that they're asking. I would really problematize this definitional issue because green jobs are not really jobs that are easily identifiable. So I wanted to see a list of the questions, who answered what, who said what. And this is very important. What you're doing, this is a very important paper because we need to get a better understanding of the impact of these greening initiatives, greening the economy. We all talk about this, but we don't understand how this would boil down to jobs. We really want to ensure the effectiveness of the policy measures taken. We promote the green transition, but we really have to understand the job repercussions of this transition. So I really want you and there's a lot of focus on the sustainable energy in the paper. And we know that this is just one sector. I mean, you've made that very clear in the presentation. I wish this is made clearer in the paper. So, I mean, I think the thinking is jobs are green when they reduce consumption of energy and raw materials, when they limit greenhouse gas emission, when they minimize waste and pollution, and when they protect and restore ecosystems. But really, you have to make peace with the ILO definition, whether you're going to use it or lose it. Just from the beginning in the paper, you can just say, I am not using the ILO definition because of the decent work requirement, because we know that if we adopt the ILO definition, one of the key aspects of green jobs is having access to social security. And we know that the labor market, 64% of workers in the labor market have no access to social insurance. So it's either we say from the beginning, we are not adopting the ILO definition for these reasons, but you throw it in the paper and you deny it or you just disagree with it in the presentation. So please remove it from the paper. Please engage very critically with this definition and say clearly whether you're going to use it or not. That's the most important thing. I think definitions are the most important things when it comes to analysis of this nature. Otherwise, I truly appreciate this output. I truly appreciate the work because this is much needed. And thank you again.
Very good. We now want to move to our third and last intervention. Rania Roshdi.
Good afternoon. First, I would like to congratulate everyone on the insightful, excellent papers. It is a privilege to be standing before such a distinguished audience, and thanks to Dr. Raghi and everyone for the amazing data set. Without further ado, this will be our outline, introduction, measuring the mismatch data, methodology, results, and then the concluding remarks. Education occupation mismatch refers to a situation in which a person in employment during the reference period occupied a job whose qualification requirements does not correspond to the level or the type of education they possess. There are two types, the horizontal and the vertical. The horizontal basically is the misalignment of educational field. However, in this paper, we will be focusing on the vertical misalignment of educational level. Actually, this topic is very important, and its importance falls under the fact that the mismatch is prevalent not only in Egypt, but also globally. Actually, the ILO in 2020 has published that more than 935 million employees across 114 countries are mismatched, 72% of which are over-educated and 25% of which are under-educated. Therefore, we are exploring this topic. Okay, so there are two different types of measuring the mismatch, the objective and the subjective methods. And of course, each one of them has its own advantages and limitations. So the normative basically is, we can also call it, the objective, we can also call it the statistical or the realized method, which is basically used by using the modal of education attained or the mean of education attained. And this one captures the most common level that can reflect more the sudden shifts in skill demand. However, it has unrealistic assumption of homogeneity of education requirements for an occupation. It also allows only one educational level to be well matched with each job, and it is inadequate to represent the demand side. And for the mode, it can overestimate the phenomena by the fact that the most common level does not necessarily mean that it is the required level for the job. On the other hand, the subjective method is job specific and easily observable. However, it has its own limitation as well. Laborers might not be well informed of their new requirements due to the current very dynamic market, or it might, of course, be biased because they can overinflate their status. Moving forward, we have used specific questions from the ELMPS survey. The first one for the self-reporting, what is the highest level of education required for your current job? So it's self-reported. And what is your highest education level? And then for the satisfaction, how satisfied are you with your current job? And it included various aspects of the job, such as earnings, job security, type of work, distance, commuting, etc. And for the earnings, we used first the monthly wage, and then we shifted to the hourly wage. For the skills, we used the question, does your job require any technical skill? And does your job require any specific abilities? And that included a list of core academic, technical, and soft skills, starting from the basic literacy to technical skills and management skills to even digital video editing skills. And then the final question was, to what extent do you have the following skills? So basically, we're comparing between the required skills and the acquired skills. Our data sets focus on wage workers aged 15 to 64 employed during the 3 months preceding the survey interview, which makes it 7,596 individuals, of course, men and females, from vocational secondary graduates and university plus graduates. And we chose these two educational tracks because they're mainly the end educational tracks in Egypt. Finally, from my side would be the methodology. So as I have earlier said, that we used the subjective and the objective methods to compare these results. We have created a self-reported mismatch status variable, and that was based on Duncan and Hoffman in 1981 model. We basically compared the attained education versus the self-reported required level of education for the job. And basically, an overeducated person would be someone whose education level exceeds the requirements by the job, and then vice versa for the undereducated. And of course, the well-matched would be both are equal. And then for the other method, we compared the attained education once to the mode of the educational level and once to the mode of schooling year. We also had dummies for being satisfied, and those reporting a strong or very strong level of each skill. And finally, a dummy for whether the job requires a specific skill. You're welcome. Thank you. And I will leave the floor to Dr. Ronnie.
Thank you, Dr. Heba. Thanks a lot. And thanks again, of course, Yani, I'm really honored to be part of this ELMPS team since 2006. And Yani, thanks for dragging everything. Thank you. Okay, so let's go to the results after the Nuran tried to quickly show us how we try to measure. أنا بقول لحضرتك خليكي كريمة كريمة معانا زي منى. Okay, I'll try. So basically, like when we compare, let's just like go directly to comparing the three methods and the results based on the three methods. We can see here that basically يعني different methods are providing, they're not really all providing similar results. They are quite dissimilar. Of course, the mood methods are more similar than the self-reported. So, but all of them agreed in two things. First, that the undereducation in Egypt is quite low. I mean, very, very few individual reported, or relatively few individual reported being undereducated. Also, that the mismatch is more evident among females, but this is a little tricky, as we have been talking throughout the 2 days and always in our in all the labor market research, that females will only stay in the labor market if they are happy with their jobs. And another two things that I want to highlight here so that we note when I continue with the presentation. First, that if we compare the self-reported with the other mood methods, we see that for vocational secondary, the self-reported were providing or showing that more individual are or giving us that more individual are mismatch or providing the highest mismatch rates compared to the two others. While for the university, the self-reported is providing the lowest mismatch rates. So just briefly, so the self-reported methods, for example, showed that 38%, this 38% of the vocational graduates were well matched, while the other two mood methods showed that over 65% were well matched. And for the university, they are quite similar, then the distinction is not as wide as we see for the vocational. So for all the three methods agreed that the majority were well matched. And if we compare here, for example, the 80% to the other two values for the mood, they are quite similar than when we talked about the vocational education graduates. And for the reason that Nuran highlighted, we're just basically going to focus mostly on the rest of the presentation on the self-reported methods. Of course, by a researcher, I invite other researchers who, for future work, who would like to explore more with the other two methods. And let's start by just figuring out or discussing who are the mismatch and where do they work and other related issues about their characteristics and jobs. So when we talk about first starting with like basic socio-economic characteristics, we see that as expected, the well match would be more prevalent in the is more common among those who are early career graduates. So we see here that like clearly there's an upward trend here when we observe the over-education or the skill. These are the well-educated, the well-matched. The well-matched is increasing with the years for both the vocational and the university graduates. And we observe the same pattern when we just compare that with age. So it makes sense. It's more as expected, since as the individual is more has more experience, is expected to have more knowledge about the labor market and hence be less mismatched. And then with the region, we see more of the mismatch in the rural Upper Egypt for both also like vocational and university graduates, and of course relatively the more well matched or the highest prevalence well matched are observed in the metropolitan areas, particularly in Alexandria and Suez Canal. We also see that as the further education increased, the prevalence of well-match among their sons or daughters are getting less, which is يعني as expected again, because further education is a good proxy of the wealth of the household, of the connections of the networks, and so on, which will definitely affect the mismatch status of the kids at home. And where also where do they work better, or how the mismatch looks relative to the job characteristics? So we see more of the mismatch individual in the informal private regular jobs, and particularly, in the informal sector, and particularly in the irregular jobs. So we see here about 94% among the vocational secondary graduates working in the private irregular reported that they are overeducated. And we see also like a big percent here among the university graduates, like 76 reporting being overeducated. And of course, overeducation is declining when we go to the public sector and the formal private. Also, overeducation is highest among those who are working outside the establishments and in small firms relative to larger firms. It's also higher in the agriculture sector, followed by the industry, and then comes the services and other sectors. Let's move now to basically comparing or seeing how the distribution of earnings by the mismatch status. So the highest median monthly wage is observed among the females who are undereducated, and among those who are university graduates, followed by the males. But let's keep in mind that this undereducated group of females are very small, since as I said at the very first slide. And then followed by the males who are also university graduates and well matched. We also see like an interesting downtrend here among all the figures. So basically saying that those who are undereducated are observing the highest rates, the highest average earnings, and the lowest is among the overeducated. So, or just like we could just simplify that, or just like to say it again, basically, overeducation was associated with a wage penalty, as we see here. Yet the undereducation was mostly associated with a wage premium. Okay. And also that the highest wage premium is observed among the females who are overeducated, among those who are vocational secondary graduates. Also, the rich data of the ELMPS allowed us to compare, to see or to talk a little bit about the satisfaction of the job, or satisfaction about their job relative to also the mismatch status. So first, as Nuran mentioned, the ELMPS asked about whether you are full satisfied or not. And here I'm just showing basically those who mentioned full satisfaction. Of course, if we add up the full satisfaction with satisfied with the full satisfied, we'll reach like even higher, much higher number than what we observe here. But overall, we see like a good, like a large value, like more or less full satisfaction with one job is quite common among males and females in the Egyptian labor market, particularly among females who are university graduates relative to their female peers. And when we compare the satisfaction with the mismatch status, so we see that satisfaction overall is higher among those who are undereducated and well matched, and it is the lowest among those who are overeducated. Similar pattern we observe for other skills, for other aspects of the job. So the ELMPS asked, for example, about the distance to job, working conditions, work schedule, and so on. And we see all with that, the dark one here, which is the undereducated, is the highest. So the undereducated are most likely to be satisfied with their job, followed by the well matched, and then comes the overeducated. And this is even more clear for the vocational than the university, but we see also like that the overeducated are always the least satisfied with their job. Now moving to the skills. We, as Nuran mentioned, I just want to remind you have two sets of questions, which is quite detailed, asking about the many things or many skills which are added in the ELMPS. We're lucky to have them. The first one, the first set of questions ask about the acquired skills, and the question is to what extent do you have the following skills? And here we add up the strong and very strong. And then the second set is asking about does your job require any of the following specification? And yes, is basically what we have or what we're showing here, the rates we're showing for the yes. So if we focus on the technical skills, for example, I wanted to start with that because although like we expect vocational education or the vocational education school to provide their students with skills, we see here that only 42% of the vocational graduates reported having strong technical skills, which were lower even than the rates reported by their university graduate peers. So we have the universities showing saying that 55% of university graduates reporting that they have strong skills relative to the 42 among the vocational. And also when we go to the questions related to whether your job required the skills, technical skills, we see that only 25% of the vocational school graduates versus 32% of the university graduate reporting that reported that working in jobs or reported working in jobs that required technical skills. 3 slides.
3 slides. Okay.
And if we
last time I'm asked to come and share.
We're very honored, but تحسبيش بس دول من ال 3 minutes. We're very honored to have someone like you in a skill لا ازاي يعني we're really honored to have you, Dr. Heba, because you've worked a lot on issues related to skill acquisition and employment programs. So if we compare technical acquiring and requiring technical skills with the mismatched status of the individuals, we see that strong technical skills was most prevalent among the undereducated university graduates. So we see here 59% among the university graduates for those who are undereducated, followed by their well-matched peers, and then comes the overeducated. So we see this again, like a trend coming here. This is not really clear or very obvious for the vocational. So the vocational who are reported that, or basically among the vocational secondary, the well-matched group had the higher prevalence of individual with strong technical skills. For the required, the pattern is not also common, but we see here that for the vocational, it's those who are undereducated and well-matched are reporting more that their job require technical skills. With this, this is for the technical skills, but we have a very large list of other skills, as I mentioned in the ELMPS. And overall, we see something similar to the technical, but not exactly. So the technical skill was a little bit not, the vocational and the university were not quite similar. But here, when we compare other skills, including basic literacy skills, soft skills, and computer web designs, and so on, we see that the other skills that were included in the ELMPS show that a similar pattern for the acquired and the required skills for both education levels. So we see the university and secondary education graduates that those who are reporting strong proficiency in specific skills were more prevalent among the well-matched and the undereducated compared to the overeducated group. So it's similar to what we observed with the technical for the university educated graph previously. And the jobs requiring specific skills are more common among the well-matched and the undereducated graduates. So basically, maybe this is a surprise that we don't see that the skills is higher among the well-educated as maybe one would expect at the first glance. But basically, it's not really surprising because, we don't see it as a surprise because undereducated individuals are more likely to need to acquire more skills to be able to acquire the job that they are in. Similarly, however, the overeducated groups are already not really utilizing, or they are in a job that are not utilizing their maximum credentials, if you could say that. So this, I see it very interesting because it's adding to the previous literature by Ragi, Carolyn, and Ghada, related to that it's not really about credentials on the labor market or education level, but it's more about the skills. So it's really the skill proficiency rather than the education level is more critical for job attainment in Egypt. I'll read it in a second. Objective mismatch yield distinctive results. Under education is not a major problem in Egypt. Focusing on the self-reporting measure methods, the mismatch phenomena appears to be more prevalent among working women and the vocational. And over-education is widespread among early career graduates in rural areas. And finally, the percentage of those who are full certified individual was the lowest among the over-educated group. The job skills are basically the final point. The job skill requirements analysis support the previous literature highlighting the importance of acquiring skills over credentials. And this, I will leave you this with like a lot of policy implications that I need to hear back from Dr.
Thank you very much, Dr. Heba. I realize that we're running over time, and I realize that I'm the one who's keeping us from lunch. So I have two pressures here.
Maybe you can take a microphone to the lunch place.
No, I will say my comments in 4 or 5 minutes, max.
Okay.
It's an excellent paper, very good flow, very clear analysis. And it left me thinking, are we, because of the over-education, are we not challenging those who are coming to the labor market well enough? And as someone who's working in the private sector, I think we need to bring investments that call for high level or high value content jobs that need to or would challenge those who are coming into the labor market. And I think this is something that the policy making, industrial policy, needs to be in place to bring this. I work in the transport sector, automotive and railway, and I can see that there is a spillover effect in countries that have adopted high value jobs, high value in terms of content and contribution to the GDP. You get the workforce to elevate in its level of qualification, which has a spillover effect. And I will talk about Morocco, and I would have liked to see more comparison to countries in the region, because this, I think, would have meant a lot. But Morocco, for example, when they brought the automotive industry into Morocco more than 10 years ago, it meant lots of investments in this particular field. It meant that the level of qualification of the labor force had to be raised. It also meant that they were able to migrate from this automotive industry into aeronautics. They are now doing lots of work for companies like Airbus in Europe. So I think we need to explore why do they feel that they are overeducated? Is it because education is free, and so they go for more education and it doesn't really cost much? Or is it because they are not being challenged enough, and we really need to look at the whole policy making and formulation of policies? I'll stop because I think I can see everyone is looking at me like, get on with it and finish. So thank you very much. I'll have to run, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well done. Thank you.